but I swear, like, I had this dream that was like this wild vision. Like, I woke up like reaching for my gun to this vision of this buck coming in like left to right. I'm like, I'm up early. I have time to get to the woods and at least get my bottle. I was like, and I should bring my gun. Like, you don't want to be the dude who goes back without his gun. But I was like, if I actually do shoot something, like, there's no way I'm getting home in time. Like, but I walk out, I bump another deer on the way. I get to the spot where the bottle should be and it's not there, but I hang out anyway. And an hour goes by, Doe comes running up this drainage, up this funnel. And then 10 minutes behind her is a buck. And yeah, grunting his way up, nose to the ground, and I shot him.
I was like, well, if I throw Mike on, then I can help others the way that these people have all helped me.
Born in the heart of the Pennsylvania deer camp, with the help of experts, friends, and local legends, we bring you valuable knowledge and powerful stories for your hunting adventures. Welcome to the East Meets West Hunt Podcast with your host, Beau Martonik.
All right, we are live. We're live now, Mike. So we got everything rolling there. Mike and I were just talking before, and he's like, "Are you?" We were just getting into a good conversation. And he's like, "You recording?" I'm like, "Nope, of course not." That's when the good conversations happen, when it's not
exactly. Recording. That's why I'm like, I'm tuned into it now. Like, let's push the button before we get too far along.
Yeah. Well, Mike Zusman, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here, man.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to get to talk to you, and we were just chatting about camera equipment and stuff, and issues with one just remote recording here, but also I've been just, if anybody's out there listening, if you have a great recommendation for a high quality camera that's good for podcast videoing, let me know. I'm looking for one, and I noticed on Riverside here that I record the podcast on, Mike was using a Sony A7 IV or so, which is the camera I was looking to buy, and I was worried about overheating issues, and you were just saying that you've experienced some there, but your buddy has been using it without issues.
Yeah, my buddy's been using them without issues, and he was just like, Mike, if you're doing any video content, you need this camera and this mic. I'm like, all right, I'm in. So I bought the stuff, and then the camera started overheating. So then I had to go down the rabbit hole of researching why. But I was going to say, like, I'm that way with tech stuff and hunting equipment. If Beau says it's good and I know Beau and it looks good, I'm going to buy it. I can't go down the research rabbit hole. Like, I'm too, I don't know. Too ADHD.
No, man, that's I mean, I think that's a good thing. I over analyze things a lot of times, and it takes way too much time. Then I get pissed at myself, and I'm like, man, I just spent way too much time on this when I could have been doing something else. And I was just doing it the other day with arrows again. Like, I don't need to change my arrows at all. Like, my arrows have been working, but I've always just like playing around with them. And I'm like, well, I was like, all right, if I decrease my weight by 20 grains, I should still have good penetration, but how much forgiveness is that going to give me in range? So if I'm off by range a little bit, I go down some rabbit holes sometimes.
Yeah. So I switched to a single pin sight, like the HHA, like Tetra.
Yep.
Right. And you have to sight that thing in at 60 yards. And I'm like, well, but what about all these variables? Like,
yeah.
How do I know when I put that tape on there that we're good to go? And I bought the sight, and I had the bow. It was like that was my third bow. And I'm like, I don't even want to sight it in. Like, I'm just going to keep shooting my old bow. Then I finally got myself over the hump, and I did it. And so I've been shooting like the same thing for 3 years, same bow, same arrows, same broadheads. Now I'm like, it would really help me out to have lighted nocks. And I'm like, but that's just another variable now. And I'm like,
yeah,
I don't want to go down that path.
Man, lighted nocks don't seem to, it's weird. I've had lighted nocks where it's completely thrown off my sight tape, and made me go crazy. And then I've had them some years that seems like everything just works out great, and out to 60, 70 yards, it's shooting just the same as it did prior, even though it's like 10 gradings different in weight. So I don't know, but I love lighted nocks, man. I would totally do that all day.
Yeah. I guess, are they legal out west, or like very state by state, right?
It's state by state. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very state by state.
So that's my thing. I've got one bow. I want one set of arrows, and I know I can use them here in Jersey on whitetail, but then it's like, all right, go out west. I don't want to have to start mixing and matching now.
Now, I think for the majority of states out there now, they do have them legal. I think Idaho's a no-go. Mm-hmm. Utah is a yes. Montana is a yes. I can't remember what Colorado is and Wyoming, but I think for the most part, they're more legal than they were before. So that's a positive. I look at it from what am I using it the most of doing, and it's like whitetail hunting in Pennsylvania, and that's kind of how I've went with doing that. But so it's funny, lighted nocks. I hate lighted nocks from the standpoint of I can never find one that actually works well. And I've been like I'm like, these are all junk. They're expensive for what they are, but when they work great. Well, someone had told me about a recommendation on these, and I hate doing this, but who knows, they're probably not gonna be cheap anymore, but these cheap Chinese ones on Amazon. And, I mean, that's where all the other ones come from too, but it was just like a game changer. Like I get 6 of them for $20 and they work every single time. And I'm like, this is awesome. I have a little switch to turn them on and off. But that's the only time I've found where buying like the cheap knockoff version of something actually worked better. So just the heads up, I can send you a link to them if you want to check them out. I don't know, they might be jumping up in price here shortly. So
yeah. Well, I'll just to not differ from my earlier stance, I'll take your word for it. I'll give them a try.
Yeah, okay.
Generally, I've learned the hard way not to go cheap, but
yeah. But the thing is, like I said, with the lighted nocks, I just haven't found any that are actually good, like premium ones that you can buy.
So what would fail on a lighted knock for you? I mean, I've used them in the past and I never had one fail.
Really?
So what, they just don't light up?
They just don't light up.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just, you shoot and then nothing happens. And it's just like, okay, that defeated the purpose of having that. Or I've had it where I'd shot an elk once, and when it hit the elk, it went off. And it was like, that would have been helpful, because that was, the whole point of it. And I hit him kind of bad, like high, and it didn't pass through. And it was like, I could really use seeing that lighted knock, especially because I was videoing it, so I could go back and look to see, where the arrow hit, and know from that point, like how to blood trail or how to go about it. But, yeah, that's the only time I've found where like the cheaper version was worth it. And for anybody that's listening, that's like, oh man, I can't afford, the best gear out there and stuff. You don't need the best gear. That's not what I'm saying. But I've learned that buying once, cry once sort of deal, that whole statement is so true when you can. If you got the ability to be able to do so, highly recommend that when it comes to gear, and just knowing it's going to work.
Yeah, especially like just critical gear. Like anything involved in like archery or shooting.
Yep.
Fine. Like clothing, I guess it depends on where you're hunting and the conditions and how extreme. But I had a release fail on me this year multiple times.
Really?
And that was kind of like, I'm not going to name it, but it was a wrist strap trigger release, and it was basically releasing prematurely. Now I've had this release for like
you've had that problem for a long
2
time,
seasons,
haven't you, Mike?
What's that?
You had that problem for a long time.
My kids are going to listen to this, so come on.
Okay.
But no, like the first time it happened, I was like, yeah, maybe that was me. Like, I guess a good opportunity is here in New Jersey, where I hunt locally. Like, you can get a lot of shot opportunities on deer, and we have very generous bag limits, like where I specifically live in Jersey. You shoot like 2 deer a day for half the year. So it's a lot of good practice. But yeah, this release just started going off. And the first time I'm like, was that me? Like, did I do that? Because then I'd practice with it and it'd be fine. Then one day, man, I probably shot 3 arrows at one deer and they were just like doinking out of the blind before I got one good.
Really?
So yeah, that was a lesson learned too.
I know you said you didn't want to say the name, but can you say yes or no? Was it a spot hog?
No.
Okay. Because I've heard that I use my trigger style release to spot hog and I love it, but I've heard a lot of people say they've had that issue with it prematurely releasing or having that issue. And honestly, I've had issues with a lot of different releases up until this point, with even more so the thumb style ones, with things getting in that mechanism, basically where it clips to your D loop, where something gets in there and it just won't stay closed. But I've never had it where it like just opened up when you didn't want it to.
Yeah. Again, I'm not going to say who it was, but
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's a struggle to when those types of things happen. And like, especially like, say like when you're hunting in the Adirondacks or something, say you were up there and you don't have many opportunities, you're staying in Jersey with generous bag limits, assuming higher deer numbers, like, if you're hunting a doe or whatever, it's not as critical, but it's like you get one opportunity or something and your equipment fails. That sucks.
Oh yeah. Fortunately that didn't happen to me this year. Cause I did have that shot opportunity in the Adirondacks. Actually, if you just want to get into it, but this year I had 2 shot opportunities. One I didn't really have, but it would have been my first shot opportunity on like a nice shooter buck in the Adirondacks 4 years in. That was archery season. And then I ended up getting one gun season, which was, a 4-year battle.
Well, let's hold off on that story for a minute before I get too deep on it. I wanted to pick up on the conversation we were having, but if you wouldn't mind giving a little bit of a background to everyone that's listening, kind of who you are, and just kind of who you are and kind of what you've done professionally into hunting. Like, just give me a background.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in northern New Jersey in like the New York City suburbs. And I was fortunate. I grew up fishing. My father took me fishing a lot, saltwater and freshwater. For some reason, I had it in me. Like I want to hunt whitetails. I think he may have had some like old hunting books in the house or something. And I kind of picked up on that. But no hunters in my family, no exposure to it. But we'd go up to his uncle's farm in upstate New York like twice a year. I remember just being in the backseat of the car, glued to the window on like the New York Thruway, like just looking for deer. Like anytime we were going on a road trip, I was just looking for deer. And hunting it wasn't in the cards for me as a kid. Like no one in my family owned guns. No one hunted. So it was just something that it just never happened. I did get into mountain biking at a young age, my like early teens. And I got into mountain bike racing. And that got me out into the woods, out in the mountains. And I think that scratched like a big itch for me and kept me out of a lot of trouble, got me to college. And then I got into a tech career, was a software developer, got into cybersecurity and ethical hacking. And we can go down that rabbit hole if you want.
Yeah.
But I ended up just working. Did a lot of really cool stuff in cybersecurity, spoke at like big conferences and things like that, did cool research, got to hack a lot of really cool companies. As a good guy, learned a lot of parallels to hunting for me in hacking. But then, it was before COVID that I bought a bow. I was like, you know what? I remember like I really wanted to hunt. Mm-hmm. And I think early adulthood, it was like, eventually I'll find someone and they're just going to take me and show me and teach me everything. And at some point I realized, you know what, that might not happen. I just need to go do it. I went and bought a bow. I was fortunate that I lived very close to a public range and I started practicing shooting my bow. And I signed up to do hunter education online. And it was like, I'm right back in high school. Like, I have to study. I have to take a test. and I can't just skip to the end and do it. So I signed up. I made it like 2 sections into the hunter education. I was like, ADHD. I can't focus for this long. I'm going to go hack stuff and shoot my bow. And I kind of tabled it, but I'm still mountain biking, out in the woods. And then COVID happens. Now I'm like mountain biking every day. There's no more travel.
Yep.
They shut down the state parks, but I was like, I'm just going riding. So I'd be out mountain biking for, 2 to 4 hours at a clip. And if you look at a map of northern New Jersey, you'll actually see a big chunk of green that spans the New York, New Jersey state line up into New York. And there's like world-class mountain biking trails, single track. You can get deep for Jersey, right?
Yeah.
You can do, a 50-mile hardcore single track mountain bike ride in that area now. And you'll cross pavement, but you never have to go on pavement. So there's a lot of mountain biking opportunity. There's also a lot of whitetail and a lot of black bear. And so one day, like kind of, I guess, summer of COVID, I basically crashed into a spike on the trail. Like I'm climbing fast. I'm super quiet. And he's just kind of browsing or chilling. And I'm like, oh, and he's like, he freezes and he takes off, obviously. But I'm like, I could have had that deer. And it just like flipped the switch back. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go do it. Lock myself in a room, like get through the hunter education, get through all that, get my license. And then I'm out there. So that was what, 4 or 5 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yeah. 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
So and I know you didn't bring this part up yet, but you were talking about your ADHD. How do you write when being like that? Does that help you, or is that a hindrance?
Good question. When I have the concept, like I'm like locked in and I just want to like get it out and kind of get it perfect. But at the same time, like to write one of these stories that you've read,
mm-hmm.
and these are short stories, anywhere from 600 to like 1,200 words, they probably take me a good 2 months to get them to where they need to be. And so like I'll start one and then I'll have kind of the opening intro hook and I'll get stuck and then I'll put it aside. Yeah. And I have to come back to it. And then it builds over time. And then once I'm like kind of into it, or I've got like a really good structure, then I can just focus and I'm like, I'm going to hammer this thing until it's perfect.
Yeah. That writing for me has been, it's a difficult thing. Like I have to be in a certain mood to do it well, or like, cause when I'm in it, like you said, like I can go through and I can pound out a lot of it. Getting started is always the hardest part for me. And then just kind of like going back and finalizing things. But I was curious about that when you were saying about how, even with doing the hunter education stuff, locking yourself in the room and having to do that, but you being a prolific writer and writing for Field Ethos. And do you write for any other places, or is that kind of...
That's pretty much it. I've submitted, I think I had one piece run in like On the Fly magazine, like fly fishing story. But for the most part, I just write for Field Ethos now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Which that's a pretty cool aspect of it. But before kind of getting into that, going back to getting into the hunting space and doing what you were doing for a living. So the hacking side of it, you were still doing that in 2020, right? During COVID, yeah. as you were going into it.
Yeah. So my arc there was I had a bunch of software developer, software engineering jobs before kind of randomly went to a career fair for a cybersecurity company in like early 2000s. And really, I mean, that was kind of a stroke of luck for me, like right place, right time. I was too young to really take advantage of the .com bubble. Like I kind of came into the workforce on the backside of that, but I timed it right for the cybersecurity. I don't want to call it a bubble, but kind of the proliferation of the cybersecurity industry in a really niche area called application security, which is like developers write code and there's vulnerabilities in the code that they write. And I was a developer. And so I could see it from both angles. Like I know the mistakes that a developer was likely to make, and I knew how to exploit them, how to find them.
Mm-hmm.
And so early 2000s, I started going down that track. And I remember going to a conference to hear experts speak. I'm like, well, those are the guys speaking, but I know exactly what they're talking about. Like I could give this presentation. That was kind of like, again, another switch flip for me.
Yeah.
And I just started going down that track. And eventually, worked for a couple companies. In 2011, I started my own. So I quit my job, went off on my own, built a company over a decade with 2 partners, ended up taking on 2 partners. We sold that company in 2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were then in that period where you stayed on with the company then?
Yeah, I stayed on for almost 2 years. I stayed on with the company that acquired us before I had a lot going on personally. My dad was sick, and it is hard to go from being a founding CEO to an employee also.
Yeah.
Could talk for hours on that. But yeah, I ended up getting out of that company and I started a coaching and consulting practice. And that's what I'm doing today. I help engineering leaders improve their leadership skills and also learn how to build and operate businesses.
Gotcha.
So basically, I was a big nerd. I took everything I learned about running a business and going from like introvert nerd to leader, CEO. And now I help others do the same.
Oh, that's so cool. And with, so what is the business that you have now? Like, what's the name of it?
Oh, great question. MZHF LLC, Mike Zusman Hunt Fish, right?
Okay.
But no, I don't know. It sounds cheesy. I'm just the Mike Zusman brand. That's what I'm trying to build now.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's super cool. I mean, and with like, I know you like briefly mentioned earlier about some correlations you see with hunting and hacking. Does that come along with the actual business building, or are you saying directly in correlation with hacking and hunting?
A little bit of both, but really like hacking is like a digital form of hunting. I mean, the same way you might look at like a topo map and see, where the animal's going to be. Like, well, I can see, this sounds weird. I can visualize software in my head and understand where developers are likely to make mistakes, right? But then you can also create like the equivalent of a topo map for software. We call them like data flow diagrams, architecture diagrams, and you can start like brainstorming, all right, where do we actually go to attack? How do we steal the data? How do we compromise this system? And then, I mean, once you get into a different aspect of cybersecurity, like more nation state stuff where you're like legitimately going after, human and corporate targets, like it's hunting.
Okay. So like, all right, this is what I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you're looking at, in general, you're looking at patterns on things to be able to help, essentially hack those places or find those issues to be able to help those people, just like you would for deer. But then you go to like that real high level stuff, and those are unique situations, like targeting a specific animal where there's like, you might find some patterns, but there's also these unique opportunities there. It takes a little bit more diving into it.
Yeah, there are patterns. There are environmentals, right, that you have to take into account, and then luck and timing, right? Like,
like exactly. That seems really in line with that. That's cool.
Yeah. On the business side, and I remember, I forget those guys' names that you had on a couple months ago. It was about becoming a creator.
Land Limited guy. Yeah, Matt and Jacob.
Yeah. Like one thing I resonated with in that episode was, what? Sometimes you just need to walk off into the wilderness on your own. Like that, and that's like, analogous to quitting your job and like, having a vision, having faith that you're actually going to be able to execute on your vision. Right. Mm-hmm. Even if it takes years, like that's, So
and
again,
and it's probably going to take years, right?
It'll definitely take years, right? And so I forget who said it on that podcast episode, but it was like, yeah, if you can like focus and target like big game and really get after it on the hunting side, you probably have what it takes to do it on the business side.
Yeah.
At least emotionally.
Yeah. I've said it a lot of times too, or recognized it, that there's a lot of people that are successful in building businesses that I know that aren't necessarily the smartest people in the world all the time. It's the people that are willing to take on that risk and then also be bullheaded enough to work through it and do it for the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the smartest people I know won't take the risks, mm-hmm. Right? Like, it's not a smart decision to quit your job and like try something new. But no risk, no reward.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, that was the podcast that at the time of recording this, when it came out this week with Lee Lakosky. It was funny because I was listening to him talk about how he's built this empire and has all this land and the whitetail space and doing these things. But he's an engineer by trade and has that engineering mind of super detail oriented. I said, how do you do that with business? Because sometimes those two things don't line up very well. And for him, it was just like that overarching goal of like being so driven by a deer that he'd just look at that goal and then just commit to it and then figure out the back steps to make that happen. And which I thought that was interesting, because I do feel like a lot of times the engineering brains have a more difficult time with being able to, start a business per se.
Yeah. It depends, right? I think being able to have the vision for something bigger, being able to have the vision for something big and kind of nebulous, while also being able to, kind of understand the nuts and bolts of things, right? I think those are the two pieces that are critical. And a lot of people have the nuts and bolts of it. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of people have the vision. A lot of people have vision, but they don't know how to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Or they don't know how to work hard, right? That's real too. But when you get both those, that's when magic happens.
Yeah. So a little bit of mixture with having the dreamers there, and mm-hmm. then also the doers, I guess, if for lack of a better term, but
yeah, but one of the things I work on now, it's like the doers, like how do you get them to think bigger, think more broadly? And even if they're not like thinking like that on their own, but how do they understand the strategy for a company, mm-hmm. right? Because then when they understand the why, the big picture, that can shape some of the decisions that they make like on the ground, right?
Yeah. Because I mean, like with what you're doing in your new business and the consulting side, a lot of time probably what you're coaching leaders that aren't necessarily like always founders or people that are responsible for the overall vision. It might be people that are responsible for carrying out that vision and passing that down to those that are working underneath them or doing that. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, like there are a lot of businesses out there where the leaders and the owners don't have a good vision, or they don't know how to communicate it like down the chain. And so if you find yourself in that situation, like how do you operate and like maintain your sanity, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes, well, it's all right, create your own vision, even if you're staying in that org, right? Create your own vision, or create your own vision and realize, oh, I need to get out of here and go do something different. So just helping people through that process.
Yeah, that's super cool. I mean, for those that are listening, Mike, we had talked back and forth on Instagram prior, and I was introduced to you from something Bill Thompson had sent from Spartan Forge of yours. I think it was something that you had wrote, and I was looking, and anyways, you and I got talking, and we jumped on a call. And at that point, I don't think I even realized 100% what you did, but you started asking me some difficult questions, and I was like, "Shit! Like, I don't know.
What do you want to do when you grow up, Beau?"
Yeah. Like, so, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Like, I don't know. It was, yeah, but it's made me think a lot on bigger picture things, and not even just that in business, just overall in life. And sometimes you get so head down focused on what you're doing that you can kind of go off track a little bit of what, the overarching goal or what you're working towards, kind of your ethos.
Absolutely. That's why I booked a moose hunt for 2029. like eye on the prize. I need to stay in shape and stay focused and keep doing what I need to do to get there. Right.
Yeah.
And there's a business component to that too.
Explain that a little bit.
Well, I don't know if you follow Alan Bolin.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Like every once in a while he'll do a business Q&A. He just did one. Although maybe this was a couple of weeks ago, but he's like, I keep growing my business. That's more hunting time. Like dollars let you go hunt. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's a powerful thing when you're motivated on both ends like that. So that's a big motivator for me. Like, I don't know. I think some people are out there like making money for money's sake, but I'm more about like, how am I going to get the most out of my life, right? And do all these cool things. Not even just for myself, but to show my kids like, hey, like you can do whatever you want. Like, even if you have a 9 to 5, you can still think big and you can go on these adventures and do these things, but you need to recognize that you have a limited amount of time and you need to figure out the right way to maximize your enjoyment in life. It doesn't need to be like life. I think a lot of people, we saw this in business. I still see this in business. When we ran our company, it was a hard business to be in, but that didn't mean it couldn't be fun. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how do you make that struggle enjoyable, right? You can do it, but it's a mindset shift for a lot of people.
Man, it's funny. My like some things that kind of drive me with things is like when I started this, I wanted to, basically I wanted to have more time to be able to hunt. And that was like kind of like a very short, like that's just what I wanted to do. And then as I got into the business side of it, I've learned that I like that too. And I've really enjoyed it. And I've also realized, because I feel like there's a lot of times there's two camps of people. There's people that work their life away and like their only goal is making money and going to that. And there's people that are on the enjoyment side of it but they don't have the money to really be able to maximize that enjoyment at times too, because I think it's a lie if you think that money's not important to be able to have. I'm not saying that that's the only thing out there, but neither is time. I mean, time is extremely valuable, but finding that balance in it. And for me, it's like, how do I maximize money that's being able to come in to be able to do things with my time that's like that I want to be able to do, and this gives me the flexibility of being able to do things at different times, not having to put in vacation requests and these things that I want to do. But I'm also working really hard and spending a lot of time in the business side of it, which I do enjoy doing. But it's been an eye-opening kind of like transition for me of loving that business side of it, and then also thinking bigger of, it's like, all right, a lot of the hunts and stuff that I do are, DIY public land stuff that I go do that are typically lower budget type things, but there's also things I want to do that are just going to cost, that there's no escaping that's going to cost money, and I want to have that experience. So I want to be able to make enough that I can do that. And that's just kind of the way I've been looking at things.
So, I think, again, going back to like the long-term vision, right? Being able to think a couple years down the road, right? I have a real situation right now where a good buddy who has a similar kind of coaching and training business, he's like, Mike, I've got this really big opportunity for us, like great project. You can make all your money in 1 month for the year. I'm like, oh, this sounds awesome. Sweet. What's about? He's like, so next November. I'm like, whoa. Right.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that's like the whole month. Like I'd have to be doing this training every day. And the work is aligned with like what I want to do. And I'm like, am I willing to give up November in the Adirondacks? Right. I already have like very little time to spend up there. And I guess we'll get to the Adirondacks. That's like my special place. But like, I'm like, well, you know what? I'm still going to go out west in September. So I better just capitalize on that and make that a good trip. And I'll do what I can early season, because I apparently I'm going to have to work all November. But, doing what I love to do is just one of those trade-offs. But I also know that that's going to set me up for success in subsequent years, right?
Yeah.
So you gotta pay the piper sometime, right? Like
a delayed gratification.
Mm-hmm. Which, how can you be like a big game hunter and not be able to deal with delayed gratification, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's I think that's I don't know. Yeah, I guess it'd be considered a skill of learning that patience of delayed gratification. But if you don't have that and you want to be consistently successful, it's very difficult. I'll take luck anytime that I can get it, but it doesn't happen all the time.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Do you consider yourself a patient person?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually do. Especially when it comes to whitetail hunting, I can sit in the same tree for days on end, dark to dark. And now, do I go a little crazy sometimes? Yeah, 100%. Do I question myself? Yes, but I can do it. And I take pride in being able to do that, or even on hunts of just like waiting it out, like, taking 4 years to kill my first elk. Like, I knew it was going to happen at some point if I just kept putting in the time, putting in the work, trying to improve, do that. So I think I would consider myself patient. Is that what you'd consider, or no?
Outside of hunting, I don't know if I'd consider myself patient. But then I find like, I can go sit in the woods for days on end and not see anything and be pretty okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of taught me like, okay, I actually can deal with like a lot of like uncertainty and boredom. Now, how do I bring that back into the rest of my life, into my business, and kind of leverage that as a strength that I didn't know I had? Because I think a lot of times in business, like just the nature of it, everything moves fast. So there's always something that needs to be done. And like, yeah, like patience isn't always a strength in that situation, right? Like we've got to get stuff done now.
Yeah.
You got to figure out how to motivate others to get stuff done quickly too.
Yeah. And I guess when I was thinking of the term patient, I wasn't thinking as much of like, just like being like, oh, well, I can be patient, wait to do this tomorrow, because tomorrow is another day per se. But like, actually, I think that's, I think a lot of entrepreneurs or people in business I talk to deal with this. But even today, like we're recording this podcast, I'm like, all right, this is, we're going to be doing this time. All right, this is what I can fit into this time block. My meeting got done before this, 30 minutes early. And so I went through, I'm like, okay, what is something that I don't need to focus on super heavily, but I can knock off the task list. And I'm constantly thinking about like how to maximize the time that I have available. But I think like looking long term, that's where like the patient thing, like I'm okay with doing something over and over again for a long period of time before seeing the results of it, I guess.
Yeah. I guess the one thing I have noticed, again, on the business side, it probably applies to the hunting, but we can talk about that. Even in my business with my partners, like we needed to think bigger for our company. And we actually hired a coach to come in, like a consultant, like to help us figure out like a real strategy. And I see this play out all over the place where it's like, oh, we don't have time to spend 8 hours thinking about random future possibilities. We have work to do today, and like the customers need stuff done. And it's like a learned skill to be able to, again, get folks out of that just kind of daily grind, task driven mentality to, okay, where are we going to be in 5 years, in 10 years? Where do we want to be? And then to capture that in a meaningful way so that it like informs the tasks you're doing every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like ultimately you have to get to that vision. Otherwise you're just going to be on the hamster wheel, right?
I do struggle with that. I could definitely see. Yeah, I definitely think I struggle with that, because like, I mean, and that totally can relate back to hunting too, from the standpoint of like, there's a thing where patience can be a detriment from the standpoint of you're doing something over and over again, you know, and being willing not to quit. Maybe you're just in a bad spot. Like there's better areas for you to scout and go check out, and taking a step back here and there and like, let's reevaluate. And yes, maybe that delays. It might take me a while to learn this new thing or this new style of hunting. Maybe it's you've only gun hunted and you want to pick up a bow to extend your season or vice versa. But by doing this and stepping back and looking at this bigger picture, then, you know, it can shoot you forward. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's part of it. But you reminded me of something else, which maybe we could just call it like target fixation, or just getting fixated on one thing. Like I see that on the business side where we're fixated on one dealer opportunity. And if we can just get this one dealer opportunity over the hump, we'll be so much better. But then you miss all these other opportunities around you. And I'll get into this situation where like, I really want to kill a deer right here in this spot, because this spot is awesome. Like why this is the spot. And then like, you know, you keep going back and like, there's no deer there, dude. Like it's just not working out. And, I struggle with that. Like how I want things to be versus how they actually are sometimes. And so that was like a key lesson I learned, I think, well, really this year up in the Adirondacks, was like, I got to cover ground and like explore, and don't be afraid to bump deer. Right. Which on the business side is like, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Right. But like, don't be afraid to bump deer. Like you have to go find deer. Like they could be anywhere within like 10 square miles. Like you're not going to find them like tiptoeing through this one little, like, you know, funnel that you think is cool. Like maybe you'll get lucky eventually, but it's not how it works. Like you got to hustle.
You know, no, it's funny. Like I just did an out of state trip to Iowa, and there's one spot on the map that, you know, I'd marked a bunch of spots going into it, marking waypoints and going to check them out. But there was this one that just like, I'm like, everything makes sense for this spot. I get there and the sign wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but I was trying to make it be better than it was. And I'm like, man, I could see this happening, and like, but there was nothing telling me it would actually happen. And then had to like, you know, I kept going and scouting more, and then it was like all of a sudden I found another spot that was like obviously 15 times better, and it was like, okay, that's you know, if I would have just been fixated, or sometimes you do find super good sign or it looks like it and you envision it in your head. I do the same thing that you just said of like, this is where I'm going to shoot a buck at, and like that's, and then maybe you get there and someone else already put a tree stand there or something, and it just completely throws you off, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the end.
Yeah. I mean, you have to look at the data, like make data-driven decisions. Like your emotions might get you to a point, but then you actually need to look at the data and like, you know, make smart decisions. And I mean, ultimately, I think that's what, if you want me to get into it, like that, the Adirondack story.
Yeah, go into it. Let's get into it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm a guy, like, if you just said, Zusman, here you go, you're free. Where are you going to go? I'm probably going to go north and east. I'm going to go to like New England, Adirondacks, Vermont. Can't tell you why. I've just always felt that way since a little kid. So now we have some family up in the Adirondacks on Lake George. We spent a lot of time up there with the kids. And I mean, it's just beautiful country, right? And obviously you can hunt up there. But, and like, fact check me on this, like it's one of the lowest deer densities in North America for whitetail, right? Yeah. I mean, you might have a better factoid on the tip of your tongue.
I don't, because I've never been there, but from everything that I hear is it's a very, very difficult low deer density area with a lot of nothingness that trying to find the pockets of where the deer are versus they don't live in all the places.
Yeah. It's just big country and they could be anywhere. And there's just not a lot of deer to begin with. But I love being up there. I love getting out deep into the woods and, you know, just having a good time. And so, all right, I'm going to go hunt up there. And the seasons are different too. So like in Jersey, you can't hunt with rifle. You can hunt with a slug gun or a muzzle loader. But up in upstate New York, you can hunt with a proper rifle, right? So it's a different style of hunting.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we have a small cabin up there. I can't hunt on my property, but there's public land within a 10-minute drive. So I've been keyed in on that piece of public as soon as we got up there, probably about 5 years ago at this point. And I guess that parcel, it's maybe 1,500 acres. And then it's surrounded by, many more thousands of private. But for me, like I'm still very time constrained, right? Like I have 3 little kids, and to get up there is a 4-hour drive. Mm-hmm. So I can get up to my cabin and I can get to this piece of public in 10 minutes from my cabin, and then I'm on foot. So it's just been my go-to for the last however many years. And I remember the first year, maybe I got up there for, I don't know, 5 days, random times throughout the year. Like I wasn't very strategic. I was just, I'm up here. I'm going to go hit the woods and see what happens. And I had one like encounter that just it just hooked me, man. Like I'm just out there deep on a trail, early morning. There's a swamp and a beaver pond, and it kind of drains into this little stream. And I was just sitting on this rock right by the stream where the thing flows out of. And I just assumed like I'm either going to see a moose or a deer like walk out into this open area. And that's what I wanted to happen. Like, why wouldn't it happen that way?
Yeah.
Look at the land, look at what's going on. And tons of old sign everywhere. So I know there's animals around. And then I just hear something eventually like kind of walking down the hiking trail, like real slow, just hitting branches, stepping on leaves. And I'm like, oh, it's going to walk out right in front of me, because I'm sitting on the trail. So I'm waiting for it, and I hear it, it's moving, and then it just stops, and then it snorts, and then it goes away. It was probably within 20 yards of me, and it winded me. I was like, all right. So that was great. Like total magical experience. Like that was the one encounter I had that year, but now I like fixated on this area for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So I just keep coming back to this spot, and I have like 2 more encounters like that where you hear them, but it's just so thick. And if you take a step, like you're busted, you can't move without making noise. Mm-hmm. So, I did like 2 or 3 years of that before I'm like, all right, I need to start like moving around this massive property. That was probably like a mile from the truck, 1.5 miles from the truck.
Okay.
And this was a problem for me, like getting in and out of hunting mode. So like, you go 500 yards from the truck, and there's sign, like there could be deer anywhere. And what I learned was, no, I need to like beeline for where I want to hunt and get there at the right time, and not be afraid like, oh, I'm going to bump something on the way or whatever. You need to move fast. Let's see. In the end, I think in 4 years, I saw one buck one time. I never even saw any doe, right? Saw one buck one time, no shot. And I actually rattled that deer in. Like I was just sitting high up on a mountain in mid-November, and rattled, heard him running around, couldn't even see him. And eventually I was like, I got to get out of here. I don't remember why I needed to move, but I knew I needed to move. And then I was moving back down towards the trail, and I heard him below, and I looked up the mountain, and there he was like 300 yards away, and he just took off. So a lot of like frustrating encounters like that until this year, where I covered a lot of ground, found a lot of sign, still wasn't seeing any deer. And I sent my buddy a pin on Onyx. I'm like, here's the property, dude. Where should I go? He's like, well, all the areas where you're going look great. But he was like, look for eastern ridges, water, and acorns, right? So I'm like, all right. I look, and I'm like, okay, that's like 500 yards from where I park, right? Like in this massive property. I'm like, what the hell? I go there, I sit one night, I just sit down low, looking up at this big mountainside, and sure enough, sunset, I hear deer moving, probably a coyote or something chasing them around. There's just a lot of action going on. So I'm like, all right, this is a decent spot. At least there's animals here. I came back like 2 weeks later, and my plan was to get up higher on that mountain. And walking up that morning, I found fresh sign, like glistening fresh sign. I'm like, all right, this is good. And I had my bow at this point. This was still early season. And
that would be in October.
Up. What's that?
That would be in October.
Yeah, that would have been in October. Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
Playing the dates back in my mind. Yeah, early archery at least goes through Halloween, I think.
Yeah, because then it goes right to gun season, doesn't it?
What's that?
Then it goes right to gun season? Is that the way
it works?
There's
a muzzleloader season, and then it goes right into regular season.
Okay, gotcha.
That might have actually been during muzzleloader. And I just took my bow because, again, time constrained. Muzzleloader wasn't sighted in, so.
Yeah.
But now I get up there, there's fresh sign. I find like a super highway, game trail. I sit on the ground with my bow. I'm like, I'm not going up in a tree. I didn't even bring my saddle. I didn't bring a stand. I'm just like, where am I? It's not worth the energy at this point.
Yep.
But I found a spot, sat down for a while, kind of drifted off, not expecting anything to happen. Next thing I hear a deer blow like right in front of me. I look up, there's a doe just staring at me. I'm like, oh crap. And then I hear something over here, and I look, and there's like, I don't know, a lot of deer. They were walking up the mountain, and this one deer came down the trail and busted me. I mean, like 30 feet in front of me. So I'm like, all right. They run off. I'm busted. Like nothing happens there. I'm like, all right, I'm coming back here in the afternoon. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I come back in the afternoon, and I'm still kind of dumb. And I'm like, I'm not going to go up in a tree. Like they're not going to come back. Like I just need to go observation, see what's going on. And that afternoon was wild. At this point, I'm actually close to a piece of private. So I'm right up against the line, which was kind of sketchy and frustrating because I'm like, it's big woods, but I'm like, right, right on the edge of public and private. That's where they want to
seem to know that, man.
And I'm sitting there for a little while, and I see like a big spike just go running higher up on the mountain in the private. I'm like, all right, seeing deer, saw a buck. Like first time I've seen a buck in like a couple years. I think that deer ended up running way down the mountain, button hooked down, and then started chasing a doe back towards me. So I hear crashing, 200 yards over here. And I see them, and they're running right along this game trail. So at this point, I'm like, sweet, I'm going to shoot a doe. I can shoot a doe. I'm going to do it. It's going to happen. So she's running. I stop her, and I've no shot. It's just, I'm on the ground. There's, brush, trees, everything, no clear shot. And then the spike sees me. He blows and runs off, but she just lingers there for like 10 minutes. And like, I can kind of see her. She can't see me. She's just lingering. And then maybe another 10 minutes go by, and this big old bastard, I just hear him start crashing down towards the doe, snort wheezing, right, like making a beeline for me. And I'm like sitting on the ground, like Indian style or whatever. I'm like trying to get, and he pops his head out, and I just see horns like everywhere. And he just looks right at me, and he's like, I'm like, crap. And then that didn't go anywhere. Like I had no shot. He busts me. He just runs back up. And so that was my first real, if I'd played that right, if I'd gone up in a tree, that would have been a different story. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But the one thing that I'll say, like, especially with the morning hunt there where you didn't bring a stand and stuff, like, totally agree with that, especially when you're not really sure where you're gonna be at.
Yeah.
Now, like, a lot of times I still will carry some sticks and a saddle and stuff just because it's light to be able to go in and check things out. But heck, the first time I went to New York and I didn't know where I was going, just went up in the middle of the season. I ended up hiking around on my back with my stuff all day, ended up shooting a buck on the ground from, seeing it and moving in. But I think being, moving around like that, that's awesome. And it's funny, like, I think there's something to be said about where you had, that spot in your mind, way back in, and it's like deer are where the deer are. It's not always where you want them to be. And it's such a hard thing of that being closer to the vehicle by the private property, like not necessarily, I mean, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but not necessarily the experience that you were exactly hoping for from where they'd be at, but that's just where they were.
Yeah. You want this like really great adventure, like 3-mile drag and, spend the night in the woods. Like no, maybe if you're lucky, but so that day came and went. I'm like, all right. It was both inspiring and frustrating, but then we get into gun season and maybe the next time I was able to go up there. So that was like end of October. Now the next time I'm back up is middle of November and I had a couple days to go. And so I actually wrote a story that just went live on Field Ethos called God's Water about this buck. This is the story. Like I had 3 days or whatever to hunt. I have 3 little kids, my wife in Jersey, sports, all that stuff. But I had these 3 days and then I had to be home. I don't know. I guess it was Tuesday. It was a Tuesday. I had to be home Tuesday afternoon to take my kid to dance and soccer and all that. But Wednesday night, I'd gone out and I'd bumped 2 does. So now I'm deep. I went to this really cool saddle that I wanted to explore for a while, and I bumped a couple of deer over there. So I'm like, all right, there are deer in this area. And I get back to the truck Monday night, and I don't know what it was, but like that walk out was like really depressing to me. I'm like, dude, like what is wrong with you? Like, why are you spending all this time, all this money? Like your wife is mad at you. Your kids are like, where's dad? And I'm like, this is dumb. Like, what am I doing? And just the negative self-talk came through and you sell the cabin, like find something else later when the kids are older. No one else likes it up here. It's just you. Like all the negative self-talk. And I get back to my truck and I'm thirsty and I go for my water bottle and it's not there. I'm like, crap. It must, like my bag had fallen. I'm like, it must have fallen out at this spot. I'm like, well, I guess I'll get it in the spring because I'm going home tomorrow and not coming back till, there's snow on the ground. So I go home that night, go to bed, kind of pray myself to sleep because I'm just like, I got to get my mind like focused on something positive. I just pray myself to sleep. And I swear I turn my alarm off too. I'm like, I'm going to sleep in. I don't need to wake up early. But I swear, like I had this dream that was like this wild vision. Like I woke up like reaching for my gun to this vision of this buck coming in like left to right. And I just remember, I'm like, wow, that was a crazy dream. It was just really weird. I don't have dreams like that. And I look at my clock and it's like 4:30 and like, I didn't even set my alarm, but I would have set it for 4:30. I'm like, I'm up early. I have time to get to the woods and at least get my bottle, which is at that spot where I bumped those 2 does. Like I may as well go get my bottle. Like, I don't know. I don't want to leave it in the woods. I felt like I was littering or something. I was like, and I should bring my gun. Like you don't want to be the dude who goes back without his gun. But I was like, if I actually do shoot something, like there's no way I'm getting home in time. Like this is just it was like a disaster waiting to happen. Right.
Yeah.
But I walk out, I bump another deer on the way. I get to the spot where the bottle should be and it's not there, but I hang out anyway. And an hour goes by, doe comes running up this drainage, up this funnel. And then 10 minutes behind her is a buck. Yeah. Grunting his way up, nose to the ground. And I shot him. It was pretty cut and dry at that point, but I was certainly shaking like a leaf. Like,
how far away was he when you shot him?
Ooh, maybe 20 yards.
Oh,
20,
up close and personal.
Yeah.
Dude, that is so awesome.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny how that all worked out that way. And, starting with praying the night before and having that dream and then actually acting on it and getting up and like just going and doing the thing. Like, did you ever find your bottle?
No, I have an idea where it might be. But yeah, I've reflected on that a lot. Like, I was done. I like quit hunting.
Yeah.
I was done. And then this chain of events happens. Right. And so obviously there's like some storyline there, like never give up, don't quit, or, it's only when you hit rock bottom or get to your lowest that you're going to find success. So you have to keep going. But it kind of made me, I didn't grow up very religious at all. Right. But like rethinking this concept of faith and what it actually means, not just in hunting, but like in life and in business, right? Like going back to that business discussion, when you have that big vision for where you want to be, like there's no guaranteed path to get there. Like you kind of have to have faith in yourself and faith that you work hard, you're going to get there eventually. Right.
Mm-hmm. And, I have it on my other screen pulled up, the photo that you have with the buck and everything there. Like, I can't imagine because I've had it happen with elk hunting. Like I said, it took 4 years to be able to kill a bull. And it was like, I remember that feeling like it was hopeless at a point where it's just like, am I just never meant to, shoot an elk with my bow out here? Like, is this just the way it is? And when that moment actually happens, it's just such an overwhelming feeling of just everything. Like, I wouldn't say I'm like an overly emotional guy when it comes to shooting an animal from, I get excited and everything, but like, I remember when I shot that elk, I was just like, there's actually tears coming down my face. I was happy. I was crying. I was like, what the heck? And it was completely uncontrollable. Like, that's just how it happened. Like, what were you feeling in that moment? And then also, like, did it taint it at all, realizing that you weren't going to make it home on time and you had some explaining to do?
Yeah. That's a great question. Right after it happened, like, again, I was shaking like a leaf, like that adrenaline dump after. And the other cool thing was there was a little fork horn walking around too. So I shoot the buck, he runs off and I hear him crash, but then there's this other deer just kind of like milling about. And that deer came up like within 20 feet of me. I got a really good wind.
Yeah.
And I'm just watching him and like, remember the steam coming out of his nostrils, and he's just chilling, like not spooked at all. And like, I'm just like massive adrenaline dump, that deer walking around. It was just, I don't know. It felt otherworldly. Right. And then I call my buddy. I should have given Andrew a shout out earlier when I was talking about how I got into hunting, because I said I didn't have any mentors or anybody and I was just doing it on my own. But it was only once I went down the path and I was like shooting my bow and doing stuff, I met Andrew, who's like 15 years younger than me, but he became like almost like a grandfather, like teach me everything he knew. So he's the guy I called first. I'm like, dude, I finally shot one like up in the Adirondacks. And I was kind of like, I don't know, honestly, I'm not throwing him under the bus, but I was like, I really wish I could share this with someone.
Yeah.
Right. Like I called another guy, Mike, who lives nearby in New York. He couldn't come out there. So yeah, I do remember that. Like, this would be really cool to share with someone else. At least I had a little bit of cell service. I could do it electronically. Right.
Yeah.
And then I had to figure out, all right, what am I going to do now? Cause I have to be home in New Jersey in like 5 hours.
With a 4-hour drive.
Yeah. So I texted my wife. I'm like, great news. I finally did it. Like, I killed this deer. Don't worry, I'm going to hang it. I'm going to dress it. I'm going to hang it and I'm going to be on my way. And she was like not having it at first. And then, I don't know, 10 or so minutes later, she's like, don't worry, I got it. I'll handle the kids today. So bless my wife. Like,
yeah,
she did me a solid.
That's That is a good way to handle it too. Of like you're still planning on.
Oh yeah,
on
no, I had a game plan. I'm like, yeah.
Like, so you're going to have to come back up basically after you
Yeah, I was literally going to hike out. I was going to hang it, hike out, drive 4 hours, do the stuff with my kids for another couple hours, then drive back. And I figured I'd get back up there, get back to the deer at midnight. So I was just, obviously worried about predators and bears and coyotes. So I was ready to do that. But she's like, you don't have to do that.
Oh, that's awesome. And too, that, I mean, and I'm sure she thought of this, of like knowing how hard you'd worked at it and everything to like let you have that moment and be able to enjoy it. Was that one, would you say that was pretty far back in?
It's like 3 miles.
Yeah. That's a long ways.
Yeah.
So, and like those drags or, whatever. And it looked like in your photos, you had like a jet sled or something. Is that?
Yeah. I went out, I hiked out, got the sled and came back. Yeah.
Yeah. Which definitely helps if you have some sort of a trail or some way to be able to pull it there. But those moments of going out, I like not being in a hurry and just like when you're tired, take a break, sit there. It's like got all day just to get this deer out, and it's like a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, no, it was a real good feeling. And then, I don't know. I would say read the story on Field Ethos, because there's like a whole other component of like, I made a really good friend that night on account of that deer. Right.
Yeah.
And like that kind of stuff is really priceless to me.
Yeah.
Like, the guy I met as a result of killing that deer, like we'll be friends for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. Which is so awesome. And I definitely urge everybody to go over and read that story. You have a way with words and writing too, that, not saying that you're not good at explaining here, but a way of a way of writing. I love your writing style. I've told you that, and it wasn't just because I had to say that. I really do love your writing style, but I would really like you to talk about that experience with that guy on here, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, no. Happy to do it.
I think this part is like one of the coolest parts of it, and yeah, just explain it.
Well, I'm gonna throw a question your way first. Like,
okay.
Do you remember the first time you ever went out to dinner by yourself?
Yeah, I do.
How'd that feel?
Terrible. Like, I feel awkward. Like, I used to do it for work all the time. When I would travel, I'd travel alone, and I'd just go sit at the bar, and just kind of sit there awkwardly and, maybe play on my phone a little bit and get some food, get a beer, and just like, yeah. But what's, I think it's easier in like a city or like a higher population area than to go to like a dive bar or something and do that. And then everyone's kind of looking at you like, who's this guy? He's not from around here. What's he doing?
So I'll just share my first time dining alone story, because it was in Amsterdam. I was like 24 and I was there on business, and this is like pre-cell phone. So you couldn't even just like put your face down and like play on your phone. And I remember I looked so uptight that the bartender, I went to like, it was like, I'm in Amsterdam, but this place next to my hotel was like an American sports bar. Okay. So I go there and she's like, you look like, what is wrong with you? She says to me, like, you're in Amsterdam, loosen up, have a good time. And she's like, here's a shot. She gave me a shot of Jaeger. And I'm like, all right, thank you, ma'am. Like, and I share that because now I love going out to dinner by myself. Like, I can go anywhere. Like, I don't know. I think it's a cool experience, but I know that's a journey for some people. But I kill this deer and I go to this dive bar that happens to have really good home cooked food near our place up in the Adirondacks. And I'm just sitting at the bar eating my dinner. And this guy next to me strikes up a conversation with me. He's like, hey, you from around here? I'm like, tell the story. I'm from Jersey, but I'm up here. I'm like, what do you do? He doesn't want to tell me what he does. He's like, just retired, public service. Don't want to talk about it. I'm like, bro, I don't really like to talk to strangers unless we're going to have an interesting conversation. So like,
Yeah.
Can you tell me what you do? And then he's like, are you a writer? He sees my hat and I'm like, well, yeah. I was like, well, what do you write about? Like, oh, hunting and fishing stories mostly. And then I was like, and actually I just killed my first Adirondack buck today. And he's like, oh, really? Turns out like he grew up like in the Adirondacks, you know, as a kid, like hunting for food. Like that was how they got by. And kind of a prolific deer hunter in his own right.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, had an amazing conversation with him. And, yeah, we're friends. This guy, you know, I want to let him tell his own story one day. So maybe I'll introduce you to Pete.
Yeah.
Put his name out there. Pete's a really interesting dude. And he's out hiking the Pacific Crest Trail right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So he's tied up for the next 6 months. He just hit 100 miles yesterday, but Pete's my guy.
Dang, that is so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know who you're going to meet in those places. So what I'll say about like the whole dining alone thing and sitting at the bar is I've also been in conversations with people I wish I hadn't met, but they're just like very, I guess annoying for lack of better terms, and not really any substance or anything like I really cared to talk about. And that made it, which is a good skill to learn, to be able to talk to anybody. But it's like, you know, typically I definitely stereotype a little bit before I, you know, go out and strike conversations to think whether I'm going to have an interesting conversation or not.
Oh yeah. You got to be careful. And as someone who was in the business of hacking, you know, Uber drivers are the worst. They're like, what do you do? I'm like, you know, a couple times they're like, oh, I'm an ethical hacker. I'm like, oh, really? What does that mean? You know, my Facebook got hacked. Can you help me? Blah, 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 blah. So I'm just like, I'm an accountant, you know, I'm an accountant, CPA.
Yeah.
Nothing cool. Gotta be careful.
Well, I run into like, especially if someone like recognizes, like, say I'm wearing a Sika jacket or something, and they're like, oh, you're a hunter. Like, what are you doing here? And it's like, to say like, you don't know if people like media, like podcasts, video, YouTube, because there's a lot of people that don't like that. And I'm like, oh man, this conversation could go one way or another. Either something like, oh, that's really cool, that's awesome, you know, or oh, you're one of those guys that's, you know, doing this or that. So it's always funny.
Yeah. I keep the taxidermy up behind me, and I've got a bear skull somewhere over there. But I, like, if I'm talking to somebody in tech, and you know, I've got all this stuff, and speaking to this woman, like intro call, we jump on the Zoom, and she keyed in on it, like the computer. She's like, "Is that real?" And I was like, "Yeah." I didn't know which way this conversation was going to go. It's like a screener, like,
oh yeah,
you know, if you're cool with that, we're going to be cool.
Yeah. And
she was like, she's European too, and it's like, oh, I don't know if she likes this. Yeah. But in the end, she was just fascinated. And we had a really good conversation about hunting and archery and everything. So that's why I keep the taxidermy up.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You know, it's funny though, even if that person was not really for hunting, typically having, you know, a face-to-face or this virtual but still face-to-face conversation usually goes a lot better. Very rarely is someone going to be like, oh, screw you, you know, and not talk to you through it. I've had conversations in places with people that were, you know, not really much. I wouldn't say they were anti-hunters, but they didn't really understand hunting, and being able to explain it and have good conversations I love doing that. I think that's super cool to be able to do so. And then at the end be like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, especially like when I ran into some people at a bar and I was going on a bear hunt, that was like, oh, where are you headed? And I'm like, oh, you know, going hunting. What are you hunting for? It's like, oh, here we go. Bears. And I'm like, oh, do you eat them? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I do. I love bear. Like, really? I'm like, yeah. Like, and I explained it, and then they were like fascinated that didn't know that you could eat bears. It's like, I actually love bear.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah. So one more arc, and I know we're coming up on time, but might be a good one to end on, is just, the art of storytelling, right? Like you said, like being able to turn somebody who's maybe curious and maybe on the cusp of like being an anti-hunter, but like giving them like a positive experience through storytelling. Same thing with the writing.
Yeah.
Like I need to be exact with my words. That's just my approach. Like I'm so precise about whittling down my words to get the story to be the way I think it should be to get a positive impact in the reader.
Mm-hmm.
And then taking it to business as well, right? Like storytelling is how you get somebody, whether they're a customer or an employee, to like believe in that grand vision that you have that seems impossible, right? The way you get them there is through storytelling. And storytelling, maybe you could probably answer this better than me because I didn't grow up around hunters, right? Like I just did this thing on my own, figured out. Now I'm into the storytelling part of it, but storytelling is just a key piece of hunting culture, right?
Yeah. And like, I think, hunters are great storytellers for the most part, or like they're always have stories to tell and go through it. But what I will say is, and I was definitely this way because I grew up around nothing but hunters. Everyone hunted. So when I was around people that didn't hunt, I didn't understand how they didn't hunt, or like, I almost kind of had the like, you don't like what I do, then screw you mentality, which was, I've learned is not the correct way of doing that. And that's not how you win anybody over in conversation. And I think that it took me a while to learn that mentality, especially when I went and worked in Pittsburgh, and I went from middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, to a city or the suburbs of Pittsburgh, essentially. And then worked with people that maybe one or two people in the office actually hunted and everyone else did not. And it was like, it'd be like, oh, you're on vacation. Where are you going? I'm like, going hunting. And it's like, holy cow, and I had to learn pretty quickly on doing that. And I think like, even when it comes down to social media or anything else, it doesn't matter what your reach is as far as numbers, but I think it's super important to tell good stories and being able to explain things in a way that's not damaging. And that's not apologizing for what you're doing. That's just a way to be able to help people understand and see your perspective. Because not to go down a whole soapbox on it, but we as hunters are definitely the minority in the grand scheme of things. And we need to be cognizant of that. And I've made plenty of mistakes, don't get me wrong, but I try to be very intentional on things and words that I use, especially with a different audience. Thinking about like a podcast like this, someone has to go in, click on it, and want to listen to it. So I can pretty much assume that they're hunters that are listening to this, or people that want to hunt. It's very rare that you're getting just this random person that stumbles upon it and listens to an hour and a half of rambling between hunters, versus social media. The algorithms can push it out to anybody, and you don't know who's going to see that or how that's going to be portrayed.
Yes, anyone can see it. And I think the art is now in telling the authentic story. I don't know. It's just authentic storytelling. Like,
yeah,
you don't want to like kind of mince your words or hold back, but a lot of times there's no value in perhaps, I don't know, like being over the top or doing like, so I guess maybe that's the problem. Like in a weird way, like social media incentivizes like inappropriate or disrespectful behavior, right? Right. And I guess I don't know if, for hunting from the general public's perspective, like where that line is. And I think that's one of the challenges, like that line shifts. Like if I say kill or I say harvest,
I was just going to bring up that example.
They're going to have a different reaction. But like I'm going to say kill.
I do the same. I do the same thing. That's something where it's
what
like,
I did.
Yeah, I didn't grow this animal and pick it from the ground. It's like I killed this animal, and that's where it's like being able to explain I'm trying to figure out, I'm struggling with the words even to explain this here, but I think of even, it doesn't have to be like always justifying what you did, more so of like I like if I shoot a deer or something, you look back and something I post or I share or I write, a lot of it, there's a story with it. It's like, wow, that's a drawn out story. Didn't need to be that dramatic. It's like, well, that's what happened. But I think if someone were to be reading that wasn't familiar with it, it's like, okay, yeah, this guy killed this animal 100%, but there's so much more to that than that. Wasn't the whole focus, as far as like, that's not the only reason that he's out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. Again, that's not saying what I do is right by any means. It's just, that's how I look at it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like the kill is only a small part of the story, right?
Yeah, it is. It's, I mean, 100%. I mean, you just talked about it. Like, why else would you continually go to the Adirondacks for 4 years if that was the only reason you were there? Mm-hmm. Like, that's a driving force. Don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, that was your goal to be able to do that, but that's not the only thing that's going to keep you coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Am I wrong?
No, you're right. It's the experience. It's making friends. It's meeting people. It's alone time in the woods, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with that. What are other, what were a couple of the other stories? If you had to, like, now I'm going to put links so people can go check out some of your writing on Field Ethos, but if you had to like point people to a couple stories to read of yours, what would they be?
Definitely that most recent one, God's Water.
Yep.
I wrote a couple exploring the intersection of like cybersecurity, privacy risk, and hunting, like hunting apps, hunting tech. And that's probably what Bill Thompson shared with you.
Yep.
Like however long ago, a year ago. But if you go to Field Ethos and just punch in Zusman in the search bar, you'll pull up all my stories. Like, I like finding the story, like the non-obvious story. Like, cool stuff happens even when you don't kill. Funny stuff happens when you don't kill. Like, so what are those stories? And like White Rump was one of them that I'm proud of. That was a lot of fun to write.
Yep. I see that one there back in December.
But I think there are also a lot of people out there who write, and the cool thing about Field Ethos is anybody can just submit a story to those guys and they'll consider it for publication. But like, obviously they don't run everything.
Yeah.
So what are the stories that they run? Like, you know, just because you go out and you kill like a big trophy buck doesn't mean it's going to be like an interesting story to read.
Yeah.
You know,
well, what I appreciate about Field Ethos and why I like reading the articles and everything there is because it's not like there's been such a focus on the SEO function of writing. And that's kind of when I got burned out on writing, was because I was getting asked to write these very cookie cutter articles of certain tactics or something, but using keywords and things that were going to be searchable. And, you know, basically like how to hunt mountain whitetails in 600 words. Like, how the hell am I going to do that? That is such a big topic to be able to explore. And I like the story aspect of things where it's like reading the stuff there. I really don't even know sometimes when I click on the title. Most of the time I don't know what I'm going to read, which is always pretty interesting. But yeah, I enjoy, like I said, I enjoy reading your stories and everything there. Are you, just as we're kind of wrapping this up here, you know, I know you said about the moose hunt that you have planned in 2029, which is super exciting, but like what is kind of next in that journey? Are you going to continue to go back to the Adirondacks every year and go to your cabin? Are you looking for something new? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, good question. I think there's one thing that I did in the last 2 years was I got my neighbor hunting in his backyard over here, like down the street from me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm figuring out like, how do I hunt locally in a way that's like fun and invigorating? And I just love like helping new people get into the sport. Right. So that's one thing that gets me excited. I'm definitely going to keep going back to the Adirondacks as long as I can.
Yep.
I think I live in Western New Jersey. And so like, I think we were talking about this, like I'm figuring out how to hunt the Adirondacks. I've got other like more remote, larger tracks that I want to get into up there. But like the resistance to hunting a new state, like I'm 20 minutes from Pennsylvania, but it feels like, even to me, like it feels insurmountable. Like, how am I going to learn to hunt this state? So I kind of want to figure out how I can start hunting PA.
Yeah.
And then I guess this is just the normal progression. I want to shoot bigger deer, man. Like,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and the thing you said first about, you know, kind of finding those places closer to home and stuff. I used to, the beginning of the podcast back in 2018, 2019, I used to always ask guests, you know, how do you define adventure? That was kind of like the tagline I had. And like how I would always answer that, you know, adventure is yours to define, and it doesn't always have to be this grand space or place to go to. You don't have to drive 24 hours out west to find cool stuff to be able to do. There's stuff closer to home that you can make of it, basically. Like, for example, there's places like, I mean, now I do also live in remote places, but even in areas that aren't like that, you don't have to go that far to still be able to find that adventure. Maybe that adventure doesn't necessarily mean that you're 10 miles deep somewhere and you got all these things, but finding, you know, goals to work towards, and that becomes an adventure in its own, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And going back to your earlier question, like what stories should people read? Like, I've written so many stories that are just about like killing small deer in New Jersey. And the interesting parts of the story are not about like the actual hunting. It's like interacting with the people around. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things about hunting in New Jersey, there's a lot of hunting opportunity here, a lot of fishing opportunity here, but there's also a lot of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like this one piece of public that I hunt, like, no, if I kill something, I'm going to have to drag it out in front of people because it's along the path along the river. Like there's people, with families, walking dogs and little kids. And it's like, all right, well, maybe depending on how crowded it is, maybe I'll wait till after dark or whatever. But
yeah,
you get into interesting situations with people. And that's where I think like the magic is. And there's like, what is adventure? There's got to be an element of risk, whether it's like risk to life or I don't know, risk to personal dignity or whatever, risk of arrest, who knows? So you don't have to be, deep in the bush to find that adventure. Right.
Yeah, totally agree on that, man. And so what else is like, from the standpoint of, you were talking about your consulting business, is that kind of what you're focusing on from a professional standpoint and like going forward and coaching people?
Yeah, that's my main mission right now. I want to help engineering leaders and other business leaders and entrepreneurs, but I feel like my niche is engineers because that's my background. I want to help them like kind of shortcut all the lessons I learned to become better leaders and grow businesses faster, right? Mm-hmm. And we can be technical experts, but it's actually like leadership and storytelling that's really going to move the needle for a growth company. So that's what I'm focusing on right now. And so I'm figuring out like, how do I do this authentically on social media, right? That's what I'm learning. So that's really fun to me. Like, again, I was always an engineer, but like marketing and branding and
yeah. Well, we've talked about that like offline when you and I had that call. You were, giving me some advice business wise and going through things, and you're like, all right, now I need your help.
Yeah.
You're like help me figure out how to do this and put myself out there. And I don't want to do that, but I know I have to do that. And it was I think it's super cool what you're doing.
Yeah. And so like, I think we talked about this with Kip and then my other buddy Ryan, but you know, I'm talking to those guys. Kip's like, yeah, you're the hunter hacker. Like, that's what you are. I'm like, no, I'm not, man. I can't do that. But like, no, that's what you are. Like, that's what you are to the rest of the world. So you kind of have to own it, but it feels, I don't know, it can feel like awkward or whatever, but
yeah,
you got to get over that.
Yeah, man. I still struggle with it a decent amount, but you kind of get to a point where you're just like, let's move past this, and just, this is what I need to do. And if I want to hit these goals and I want to do things, this is what it is. And then it helps once you start seeing people that you help and like through the stuff that you're doing, that it really reinforces that, you know, that desire or for what you're trying to accomplish, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Once you start stacking those wins, you see it's working. That's when you start to feel like empowered, right? Like it's working. So you double down, go harder.
100%. And so your Instagram is at Mike Z Writes, which I'll put a link down here below. But is there anywhere else people can reach out to you if they were interested in, you know, going through and talking with you in your consulting service or anything else?
Sure. No, Instagram's a great place to reach me, but also LinkedIn. And I have a website that I'm not particularly fond of, but folks can find me there and reach out to me through that. That's a work in progress.
Is that just your name?
Yeah, MikeZusman.com.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely put in, I like it, Hunt, Hack, Create.
Yeah.
It's good stuff, dude.
Yeah. Hunt opportunities, hack solutions, create outcomes, man.
I like it.
There it is.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming on, man. This was an absolute blast. It's been a long time in the making, and we've been we'll do one at some point in person. But I appreciate you making the time and coming on here.
No, thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me ramble on. Thanks to your listeners for listening or watching. I appreciate it. And thank you, man.
Yeah. Awesome, buddy. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your buddies. Leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe. If you want to check out more content like this, there's plenty in the links below. We truly appreciate having you guys along with us.